Today, we're going to talk about how to get started with UniFi. And I know we have a mixed group of people here today. We have some people who already use UniFi, maybe do a lot of projects with UniFi and Ubiquiti all over India. And there are some people who maybe are just a little bit experienced in IT. Maybe they manage IT for your company, or you manage your SI or your reseller, and you're looking to understand more about UniFi. The goal of today's webinar and today's session here is to try and give you all the tools you need on how to get started with Ubiquiti. So it's going to be a more basic session. So if you already do use Ubiquiti, it might be a little basic, but we will be also introducing and talking about some newer products that were launched, which you may not know about just yet. So stick along. But once again, the goal here is to really try and tell you everything from 0 to 100, what you need to set up your Ubiquiti UniFi network. So just want to make sure everyone can hear me clearly. So if you can't hear me once again, please mention in the chat out here, and we will try to make sure that the audio is fixed. So let's start with what is Ubiquiti? Kya hai Ubiquiti? So Ubiquiti is a global leader in managed Wi-Fi services. We're focused on increasing access to Wi-Fi and IT and network technology on a global scale. And we operate in around 180 countries around the world, and till date have shipped around over 90 million devices. And our devices range from your point-to-point, point-to-multipoint links, all the way to your UniFi, your access points, your switches, your routers, as well as your IP cameras, and a bunch of other IoT devices like door access and phones that we've been manufacturing. So quickly, kind of want to understand, why would someone choose UniFi? So of course, this session is focused on UniFi. So I want to explain to you why many people from all across the world, why do they choose UniFi for their Wi-Fi networks? And actually the answer is not too complicated, because, so in short, UniFi simplifies your company's IT. It's a network operating system that lets you manage high performance networking equipment very easily and at a very low and disruptive cost. So if you look at the performance of UniFi devices and compare it to similar vendors, you won't find the value you get from UniFi anywhere else. You might be able to, sure, you might find some cheaper devices in the consumer range, but you will not find the same value in the enterprise range as you do with the UniFi product. So that's the first most important thing. And one way we achieve this is by making sure that there are no hidden costs here. Many vendors may charge you 1 year, 3 year, 5 year licenses and make you pay extra for support, for example. Whereas in UniFi, there are no additional costs at all. There are no hidden costs, and there are no licensing fees for any of our products. And the other thing that's, I would say, pretty groundbreaking is what Ubiquiti was able to do, is we are also able to offer a completely free software-based controller. So the UniFi Controller, which is a software-based controller downloadable right now from our website, is a completely free software that lets you manage all your devices. So all your sites, all your devices, all your users can all be managed the same software. So whether you're a small office and you have 2 access points, or you are a large corporation and you have around 50 to 100 different sites all over India in different cities with different offices, all of that can be managed from the same controller, which is pretty impressive, given that the controllers are completely free software. And as we will see later on, which we're going to be doing some small demos here, as you will see later on, it's also very easy to set up. We'll do a short setup as well of one of the devices. I have a device out here. I have the UniFi Flex HD with me out here. So we'll do a bit of a short setup to show how that works and how easy it is to set up. And finally, because it's such an established company and because it's such a large company across almost every country you can think of, you also have the support of a very strong global user community who is able to support you, give you suggestions, and people learn from you, discuss, and kind of, it's always good to have the backing of a very large community. So that's kind of a bit about why you choose UniFi. And of course, I can talk to it right now, but let's get into it and let's really show you what the products are like, what the solution is like, so you can make a decision for yourself on whether or not UniFi is the right decision for you and your company. So what does a network look like? Some people might be familiar with this, some people might not be familiar with this. If you're just starting off, and kind of, if you're looking at UniFi for your home and say right now you just use the router that the ISP gives you, This might look a little more complicated. This is kind of more on the enterprise grade side of things, where you want the manageability, you want the control, and you want the performance that UniFi gives you. So the way we understand this network, it's actually fairly simple, and it's kind of 4 components really. So you first have your ISP modem, as you see on the bottom right there. You have the ISP modem, which is the modem that your ISP gives you. That does not change, whether you're using Airtel or you're using Jio, you're using ACT FiberNet, or you're using Tata. It doesn't matter. The ISP modem will be the same, and that's the line that comes in. So after the ISP modem will sit your router. So what we have in UniFi is we have the security gateway, which is your router come firewall. It's one device that has your routing as well as your firewall settings. So we have the security gateway. And then from there, you will connect it to a switch. And how many switches you need is completely based on your network. And we'll again talk about that in a little bit. And then once you connect it to the switch, from the switch, your cables will go to your LANs, to your desktops, to your other IoT devices, and then finally to your access points. And your access points are what finally is the device that gives out Wi-Fi to your client devices, be it your phones or your laptops. So access point is kind of the last step before your Wi-Fi, your phone can connect to the Wi-Fi. And one thing I want to point out, which is also fairly important, is that we don't overcomplicate our product range. I know some companies have different SMB product ranges, different home user product ranges, different enterprise product ranges. In UniFi, it's a fairly standard product range, and the UniFi product range can be used anywhere from a small office, medium-sized office. You can talk about hospitals, hotels, parks, concert, Maidan, large companies. So depending, doesn't matter what kind of setup you have, you will always be able to find some UniFi devices that work well for you. So here, if you can see, here are some pictures of which many of them actually are in India. On the top left, it's a UniFi set up in someone's home in Mumbai. At the bottom, you can see it's a school outside of Delhi. Bottom, you can also see it's an office there. On the bottom right, it's a garden in someone's villa. Top right, you can see it's the same school there. And on the top there, you can see it's actually outdoor access points as well as a camera being used at a hotel, outdoor hotel area. So these are some places just to see where UniFi can be used. And as you see, it can be used in indoor as well as outdoor situations, and smaller as well as larger deployments. So now we'll get into really some of the details here. And of course, when you're setting up your network, the first thing you're going to ask yourself is, how do you select the devices? Of course, it's a bit complicated. Maybe when you have more than one device to choose from, you have to make a decision which is the best access point for you, which is the best switch for you, which is the best security gateway for you. So of course, it will take some kind of understanding the devices. And today what we're going to try and do is really distill the main essential pointers here to see what it is that you need to look at in order to make a decision on which devices are best for your own network. And each person's decisions are different. It can be different based on the type of network, and it also can be based on the cost you're looking at. So both things, of course, have to be taken into account. I'll take a small pause here just to make sure that we're on track, keeping sure everyone's on the chat, everyone can listen. And as I mentioned earlier, if you still have questions, you can put it in the chat out there. And if this is a recording, if you're not viewing the live version, there's a comment section below. You can always put your questions in the comment section and we will reply to you almost within the day. And we have also many other videos on our YouTube channel. So you can always subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's a red button, you can subscribe. And we'll be releasing more videos every 2 weeks or so to give you more information about the network. But for now, let's get back into it. So access points. The access points, as I mentioned, are in UniFi, it's often the small round things, and that's what gives Wi-Fi to your client devices. So in access points, what are some of the things we think about? Number one is your environment. Is it outdoor or indoor? If it's an outdoor environment, then you want to look at outdoor access points, which are waterproof, weatherproof, especially in India, so much rain. Barish, I think, happens in almost every city that you can think about in India. So you want to make sure that you don't use the indoor access points outdoor. And if it's also indoor, you want to make sure you use the indoor access points because they're built for indoor settings. Desired throughput. What kind of throughput are you looking at? Are you looking at basic connectivity just for basic browsing for a few devices? Or are you looking at kind of home networks? Are you looking at work from home? Are you looking at work from kind of professionals working from home where you're on video calls all day? You have 5, 6, 7, 10 devices on Skype all day, on Zoom all day. So definitely want to understand what is the desired throughput for you, because that will determine the device. Number of client devices. Kitne device hone wale hai? How many devices are going to be connecting to your Wi-Fi? If it's a home network and it's just for your family in your own bedroom, maybe you have 5, maybe 10, maybe you have some iPads, you have some smart TVs, maybe it goes to 15, 20. That might be it. But say we're talking about a school classroom, or say we're talking about a hotel lobby. Of course, the number of clients there are going to be a lot more. You're going to be talking about 50, 100, 200. So we're going to talk about the different solutions there, because there are access points that support 60 clients. There are access points that support 300 clients. So based on your requirement, you can choose the best access point there. And finally, one thing that's important is also mounting options. Most of our access points are recommended for ceiling mounting. You'll want to mount them on the ceiling. But we do have some access points which we've recently launched also that are kind of good for wall mounting, pole mounting. So we'll talk about the different mounting options, because that can also determine which access point works for you. Now talking about switches. In switches, we have an entire range of managed switches. All the switches you should know are gigabit switches, so at least 1 GB ports. And it goes anywhere from 5 port. We've launched a couple of new 5 port switches. And then we have 8 port switches, we have 16 port switches, we have 24 port switches, 48 port switches, all PoE and non-PoE. So we'll talk about that. So depending on the number of devices you have, that's the size of the switch you'll want. If you only have like 4 or 5 devices, you don't need a 48 port switch. But if you have 30, 35 devices, you may want a 48 port switch. It's always good to get a switch with a few extra ports for future use when you add more devices. We'll talk about 1G versus 10G. Some of our switches also have 10G and SFP plus ports. So if that's something your network needs, you'll want to go for a switch which has that. And then the PoE budget. Do you want a PoE switch? A PoE switch means that all your devices can then be powered by the switch itself. You don't need an external PoE adapter. Or you don't care about the PoE, you're okay using the adapter, then you can go for a non-PoE switch as well. So we'll talk about both the versions. And finally, the security gateway. As I mentioned, what we call security gateway in UniFi is the router. So this is kind of the brain, almost the brain of your network. This decides how the network is being directed or routed. So there also we do have a few options there, and based on the number of clients, based on the throughput, based on the RAM memory you're looking at, you will see which is the best security gateway for your needs. So I'll just quickly go through the different kinds of groupings of access points. And then at the end, I'll also show you a chart of all the access points so you can actually compare across the board. So here you can see we have indoor access points. These are your, I would say, most basic access points. You have the UniFi AC Lite, UniFi AC LR, and UniFi AC Pro. Those are, I would say, the basic line of access points, as we call it, Gen 1 access points. All our access points, you should know, are dual band. So every single access point is 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. So they're all dual band access points. As if you don't know yet, the difference is 2.4 gigahertz is more focused on long distances, has a better range, whereas 5 gigahertz generally has much better speeds and throughputs. So depending on what kind of network you are, the access point will decide whether it's a 2.4 connection or a 5 gigahertz connection for you. So you can always set it up so that it automatically decides what the best frequency is for your device. You can see these are kind of smaller users. So starts from 60 max users to 120 max users. And these are kind of total concurrent users that can be connected to the access point at the same time. Generally, I will say that this is not a hard limit. Very often the number of connected devices can go above these numbers as well. But just as a conservative number, to make sure that every user on the network is enjoying good enough speeds. We've set these numbers here. And as you can see, the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz radio rates in AC Pro, it goes all the way to 1300 Mbps. And in the AC Pro, we also have a second LAN port, which you can use. So again, you're basically based on the throughput and based on the number of users, you would go for a light LR. LR stands for long range, or a Pro access point. And these are fairly common in smaller offices and restaurants where kind of you may have 3 or 4 different devices set up. So not one device is too loaded with too many users. And also in residences, you can have these access points as well. But that doesn't mean you can't have the other access points in residences. We have residences with our HD access points as well. So let's talk about some of these HD access points now. HD, what does HD stand for? HD stands for high density. So density means number of people. Kitne log hai, kitna crowded hai ye jagah. So the high density access points here will talk about kind of areas where you're looking for better performance, areas where you're expecting more users. So we have out here, you can see the Nano HD, the Flex HD, as well as the UAP HD. The Nano HD is one of our smallest access points. It's a very small but still very powerful access point. You can see it supports a 4x4 MIMO, which is kind of a step ahead from the access points we saw earlier. And it also supports 1700 Mbps in the 5 gigahertz. So if you look at the 5 gigahertz, it's pretty high. It's much higher than the AC Pro, for example, and also supports 200 max users. So that's the Nano HD. And a step above the Nano HD is the HD. So HD actually supports a larger radio rate in the 2.4, 800 Mbps, and also supports 300 users. So if you're really expecting a high density situation, or you just want to be careful and you want to make sure that there's absolutely no lags, there's absolutely no issue with speeds and throughput, the HD is one of our best access points and our highest performing access points. And most recently, we have also launched this thing called the UniFi Flex HD. I have it in my hand out here. It's something we're going to be opening up later on in the session and even connecting it. So this is actually similar to the Nano HD in performance, but the difference is that given its shape and given its form, it doesn't have to be ceiling mounted. You can even use this for a table mounting or a wall mounting or a pole mounting. So definitely something we would be talking about more later. And it's something, it's a very exciting new, it's one of our latest access points and one of our most unique access points, given the way it can be placed and given the way the radios inside the access points have been set up. Now let's also talk a bit about our outdoor access points. As I mentioned, one of the important things to think about when looking at access points is the environment. If it's an indoor environment, we've spoken about the access points, but if it's an outdoor environment, what are the access points there that will work best? So we have the UAP-AC Mesh and the UAP-AC Mesh Pro. Both of those are built for outdoor settings. As you can see, they are kind of water resistant, dust resistant. Depending on the throughput and depending on the number of client devices, you can either look at the Mesh or the Mesh Pro. The Mesh supports 60 users or so, and the Mesh Pro is double of that, supports 120 users. But we also still have the UAP Flex HD that is also built for outdoor settings. So that's an indoor and outdoor access point, which kind of could be very interesting to use in certain settings. And I think someone mentioned in the chat as well, we do have something called the in-wall access point. So the in-wall access point is built in situations where you don't want to ceiling mount it. Maybe it's a hotel room, maybe you want it to look nice, you don't want to ceiling mount it, and you want it to be discreet. You don't want it to be in the public vision and you want it to be hidden somewhere. You can always get these in-wall access points. These in-wall access points kind of fit straight into your wall socket, and you actually get all the, as you can see here, you get the whole kind of all the devices you need to put it into your wall socket and connect it to your wall socket. And these are very commonly used in hotel settings, in bedroom settings where you don't want a ceiling mount or you can't ceiling mount it. In this case, the in-wall and the in-wall HD are pretty popular access points. So yeah, as I mentioned, this is kind of the whole range of access points. You don't need to remember this right now. We will send you a brochure at the end of this presentation. So we'll send this to you, which has all this information. But basically, from start to finish, this is what your access point range looks like. And based on, again, based on your environment, based on your required throughput, based on the number of devices, you can really select all the any access point you want. And all the access points can be managed through the UniFi controller. So this free network controller, which we'll again look at in a little bit, that will manage all your access points very seamlessly. So we spoke about access points at depth, which I would say is kind of a very important part of the network. But another thing that you absolutely do need in your network is switches. So let's talk a bit about the different switches that we have. And a lot of these switches people may have used, but we also do have a completely new range of Gen 2 switches that we have launched. And these Gen 2 switches are very exciting. They have some newer models, some lighter weight models, like we have a 5-port switch model, which we did not have earlier. We also have kind of some flex light models. So it's kind of the 8 flex and the 16-port flex, as you can see on the right of the screen here. So there are some pretty interesting light models here of switches, as well as our kind of robust 8-port, 24-port, 16-port, 48-port switches. And this new range of Gen 2 switches, also one of the cool feature in this switches is that it has a small screen. As you can see at the bottom left, that there's a small screen, and that's actually a touch screen which you can use to monitor your switch, and it shows you the performance, it shows you how each port is doing, and it's something you can do even without going into your controller. So it's a very interesting and cool way to make sure that your switch is working fine and make sure all the statistics are in order as you would need them to be. So the switches are, this is kind of more in depth. As we discussed, there are a few things you look at when you choose which switch you want. The number one thing you look at always is how many ports do you need, right? If it's a small network and an 8-port switch is fine, there's no need to purchase a 48-port switch. But if it's a larger network, you might want to get into a 48-port switch or a 24-port switch just to make sure all your devices are taken care of. So of course, the number one thing to look at is how many ports do you need in your switch based on how many access points and how many other LAN devices you are going to connect. And then after that, you want to look at PoE and non-PoE. We do have some PoE options as well as non-PoE options here. And then you also want to look at kind of what kind of how many PoE plus ports, how many PoE plus plus ports, what are the SFP links in the switch? Does it have SFP ports, SFP plus ports? So those are some of the things you would want to look at in switches, but this would come after you have decided what your network looks like and how many devices actually you're going to be connecting in your network. So moving on, let's talk about the security gateway. And as I mentioned earlier, the security gateway is basically your router. So this is what is directly connected to your ISP modem. So you most definitely need to have a router. Any network will have to have a router. So the USG is an option for a router. And the cool thing about UniFi's router is it also has security features in there. And that's why we call it the UniFi Security Gateway or USG. So it has a lot of features in there like DPI, deep packet inspection, load balancing and failover. It has DNAT, advanced firewall policies, inter-VLAN routing. Something that's been very common this year is VPN, site-to-site and remote access VPNs. It can manage all your traffic. So there are a lot of different features that come in this device. And again, something very interesting here is that this gives you the firewall security for your network without any licensing fees. So if you're currently paying for a separate firewall provider, think about the UniFi Security Gateway because it's a small device, it's not a very expensive device, and there are absolutely no ongoing fees once you purchase the device. So with a one-time cost, you even get a firewall set up in your system along with a router. So again, you're depending on the number of users and clients you're expecting. If it's a smaller network, the USG generally works okay. If it's a larger network, you would want to go for the USG Pro 4, or we're going to talk about the UDM Pro soon, the UniFi Dream Machine Pro, and that also has a security gateway in it. So we'll talk a bit about kind of what that is in the next slide. So some people may have heard about the UDM, the Unified Dream Machine. Some people may not have. It's kind of a more recent release for UniFi. We have basically what we've done is we have combined many different devices into one. So all this time we spoke about access points, we spoke about switches, we spoke about security gateway, we spoke about the controller. What this Unified Dream Machine does is it takes all the different devices and it combines it into one. So this, I have the Unified Dream Machine here, for example. This is the box for the Unified Dream Machine. It's a very sleek, small device. And that actually combines your 4x4 MIMO access point, combines a 4-port switch, combines your security gateway, and also has the wireless controller already loaded in here. So you don't have to worry about installing it anywhere else. So this sleek small device has 4 devices combined in one. And then taking that a step further, we also have something called the Unified Dream Machine Pro. And that's going to be launching very, very soon in India. We're expecting it to launch this month or next month, so very soon. And what it does is it actually is for larger networks. It has an 8-port switch instead of a 4-port switch. It has a more advanced security gateway, enterprise security gateway, more advanced specs there. It has the wireless controller, the UniFi controller, and also it has the NVR for our cameras. So I'll talk in a bit about UniFi Protect, which is our camera range. And the Unified Dream Machine Pro actually also has the video storage facility and the NVR for your UniFi Protect cameras. So it's a lot of devices combined in one. And if you actually go to divide up the devices and see how much it would cost, it's a huge cost saving to get something like the UDM or the UDM Pro, because it's much cheaper than getting the 4 other devices separately. And now, very exciting, something very exciting we're going to talk about, which is the first time we're actually announcing this here, is we will be coming out with UniFi 6 very, very soon. 2 models have launched in the US and we'll be bringing it to India very soon. The UniFi 6 Lite and the UniFi 6 Long Range. Those are both our newest Wi-Fi 6 enabled access points. So they are highly efficient Wi-Fi access points. As you can see here in the 5 gigahertz band, the UniFi 6 Lite supports a radio rate of 1.2 Gbps. And the UniFi 6 Long Range, which is kind of with built-in long range capabilities, also supports now in the 4x4 MIMO 2.4 Gbps. So these are, of course, very, very much faster access points. One thing I will say is also you want to make sure that the devices you're using are Wi-Fi 6 compatible, because Wi-Fi 6 is not going to work with all devices. And a lot of people go around kind of looking to get Wi-Fi 6 for everything and then complain about speeds. But you also want to make sure that your devices can handle those kinds of speeds. And right now, not many devices can. Of course, in the future, we're expecting a lot more devices to come out that can handle Wi-Fi 6. But right now, not every device can. So of course, you want to make sure that Wi-Fi 6 is the right decision for you right now. It may not be always, but still very exciting and still something definitely worth trying out. And we will be launching these devices also very, very soon. So this is kind of what a complete UniFi network looks like. I think we spoke about it in the beginning as well. But here you can see, now that we've spoken about the devices, maybe you can identify them here. As we said, we have the ISP modem, which connects directly into your, in this case, it's the UDM Pro. The UDM Pro, as I mentioned, has the router inside it. So you don't need a separate router if you're using the UDM Pro. It also has a switch. So one of the switch ports from the UDM Pro can connect to another switch. And from that switch, you can then connect to various other access points and other LAN devices. So this is kind of a summary of what your UniFi network is going to look like. And just very quickly now, I'm going to quickly just talk about UniFi Protect. I know a lot of people are interested in our camera range. So we do have a range of IP cameras. I won't spend too much time on it because we want to focus this session more on the Wi-Fi side of things. But UniFi Protect is a very, very interesting range of IP cameras. Also works on a UniFi software. Again, completely free software, which can be managed from the same UniFi kind of controller browser, which we'll talk about. And it's also one thing about the cameras, it's very focused on security. So we don't store anything on the cloud. We don't have any storage on our cloud. So everything is stored locally, either on a cloud key or on your UDM Pro. So that makes sure that security is our number one priority for your video recordings, and make sure that everything can be managed by you. So this is what kind of the UniFi video controller looks like. You can add as many kind of cameras as you want here, and you can view all of them remotely from your phone as well as from your browser. And yeah, so this also kind of is part of the entire UniFi family. So let's talk now. We've spoken about the devices. We've spoken about a lot of things in terms of which devices you need. But of course, very important in making sure all these devices work well together is network planning. So what do you look at when planning your network? And to do this, we're actually going to use a tool that Ubiquiti has launched called the UniFi Design Center. So I'm going to share my screen now and convert it to this tool. If you give me a second here. So this, if you can see my screen now, is the UniFi Design Center. It's a new tool, and it can be found at at design.ui.com. You simply need to go here, and if you want, we can even show it to you again. We go to design.ui.com here. And here you can upload your own floor plan. So of course, this is a demo floor plan here, but you can definitely upload your own floor plan that you have, and you can name it as you want to. And then once that's done, you can select your devices. So you can simply go here, select your different devices. So let's say you want an access point. You can, let's look at the UAPSC Pro. Let's add the device, say here. You can move it around as you wish. Another very important thing is making sure all your wires are in place, which we'll talk about. And then you also want to make sure you understand what wall materials you're working with. Now, this is very important because in India, a lot of our setups have brick walls or concrete walls. And a lot of people talk about kind of setting up mesh networks, setting up wireless meshes to wirelessly connect to everything. And that's good. That's good for some home settings. That's good for houses where you are able to do that. But in many cases in India, we have pretty solid walls, which means that the connectivity between walls is going to be hampered. It's not about which Wi-Fi device you use. You could use the best Wi-Fi devices out there. But if you have a brick wall or if you have a concrete wall, you are going to face a lot of issues in terms of connectivity across multiple walls. So one thing our design tool lets you do is it actually lets you select the wall material. So say you have brick walls here, you have wooden wall here, you have glass wall here. So for example, if you have a glass wall, it's totally fine. Wi-Fi signals can very easily travel through glass walls. But if you have a brick or a concrete wall, which is a heavy material, and say this actually is a completely brick wall we have out here, okay? See, this is the room with a brick wall here, right? That means that this access point in here is not going to very easily be able to project. And let's see how that works here. So if you go here and you turn on 5G, you can actually see what the heat map looks like here. So let's say I move this around. Say I delete this access point, right? Say I delete this access point. Now we can see here that even though we may have two access points in this room, because of this wall here, this entire area is not going to get good network. Now, of course, if this wall material had changed, say the wall had changed into a glass wall, pretty good. ठीक है फिर शायद ठीक होगा. We have it, but if you have a brick wall, it's going to be a bit of an issue. So then what you may want to do is you want to kind of maybe place another access point here to make sure maybe you don't need this access point here in the lobby because it's taken care of. So you can maybe delete this. And accordingly, you can really figure out what's the best way to design your network here. And there's also a pretty interesting tool called auto cabling. So once you've set up all your different access points, What you can also do is you can click on this use auto cable option, and then the system will automatically cable up all your access points. So you can get an idea of what your cabling should look like. This gives you a good idea of what your cabling should look like. So definitely something you want to be using. This is a great way, and especially if you're an SI who is working with clients, this is a great tool to use in order to show your clients and your customers what the Wi-Fi is going to look like in their settings. So definitely recommend using this. And of course, keep in mind which devices you're using. You can have an AP HD or you can have an AP Lite and you have an AP Pro. It definitely will impact what throughput you're getting, what users you're connecting to. So you have to always bear in mind if you're using the right access points for your network. So let's go back to where we were. And so we spoke about network planning a little bit here, right? We spoke about looking at making sure your wiring is future-proof. And when we say future-proof, what we mean is we want to make sure that you have Cat6 and fiber wires placed all across. And even if you don't need it in certain place, run a few extra wires, right? So that's definitely something that's pretty good. And then making sure that you are thinking about the number of devices, the number of users, the bandwidth that you need. And then also making sure your access points are placed in a good way. And you can definitely use our design tool to check the placement. Next, let's talk about kind of what the controller is. And I'll go into a bit of detail in it very soon, but the UniFi controller is basically a software controller that lets you manage everything. So right from the setting up and the AP adoption to the entire management is done through the UniFi controller. So you can always go to demo.ui.com. That's a completely open website, demo.ui.com. So even if you don't have any purchases, any devices, you can go to our demo and you can play around with the controller just to see what it looks like. So definitely recommend going to demo.ui.com just to get an idea of what the controller is looking like. And as I said, it's a software controller, right? So you don't have to purchase any external hardware for it. But because it's a software controller, what that means is the software needs to be downloaded somewhere. You have to have the software sitting somewhere, right? So there are a lot of options here when you look at it. So there are three main options when you talk about the UniFi controller. Either you can download it on your own machine. If you have a PC or if you have a server, a dedicated server, you can download it on there. You can have this thing called a cloud key or use the UDM. So a cloud key is a small device. As you can see at the bottom of the screen, the UCK, it's a small device that plugs into your switch and acts like a mini computer. It's a very small power consumption mini computer, which basically runs the controller on it. So once you have the cloud key set up in your network, you can very easily just log into your browser, go to your browser, log into your account and access your network. And as I said, the UniFi Dream machine that we're going to talk about soon actually has the cloud key already inbuilt. So if you have the UniFi Dream machine in your network, you don't have to worry about any other controller downloads. Or if you have say you have a network across many areas and you don't want a physical server, you also definitely have the option to upload your network and upload your controller onto a cloud service like an AWS or an Azure cloud service. So for larger networks, this ends up being very useful, where you have a cloud-based or a web-based kind of area where you can download the controller. And we have different softwares and we have the different instructions on how you can do each one. We won't get into the details here, but if you have questions, we'll talk about how you can also access our support team to get those questions answered. So as I spoke about the cloud key, we've launched recently the Cloud Key Gen 2 Plus. So this is a combination of our wireless controller as well as our video controller. So you can very simply use it to manage your cameras as well as manage up to 50 UniFi devices, and it can be set up very easily, and it's perfect for remote management. This is something that's already available and being used all across India. So let's get to the fun part now. We do have around 15 minutes left. So let me get to kind of device adoption. And let's talk about how exactly do we adopt a UniFi device into the network. And for that, we're going to open up a completely new device here. What we're going to do is we're going to have a new device for you here, right? So let's open this up, and I'm going to, for a second, make it full screen here for you guys. So if you see here, this is the UniFi Flex HD we spoke about. So let's open this up and let's quickly see what it looks like and how we can connect it to our network. So I'm opening up the box. This is what the inside looks like. The UniFi Flex HD comes with a PoE adapter. So if you don't have a PoE switch, you can definitely use the PoE adapter. And then you also does come with a few mounting options. Let's see what the mounting options are. It comes with a few. This is a pole mounting feature. This is a wire, another wire for a pole mounting option. And then there's also kind of a ceiling mounting option. If you need to mount on the ceiling, this is something you can use for that. So it does come with the mounts in it. And then this is what your Flex HD looks like. It's a very high performance, almost like the Nano HD. So let's remove this protective plastic, make sure my hands are clean so don't get any marks on this beautiful device. So let's go ahead and connect it. As I mentioned, as you can see here, it's very easy to even table mount this device. You don't have to ceiling mount it. And then the back here, you can see kind of hidden back here is a small port. So if you open the port, very simply open up the port here. This is where your wire goes. So I've already set up a UniFi Dream machine. So if you see here, we have the UniFi Dream machine, which I've already connected. So it's connected directly to my modem and it's already set up. And because it's a UniFi Dream machine, it already has the controller in here. So you don't need a separate Cloud Key controller. You don't need a separate download the controller. The controller is already in this small device. And now you can see here, the back of the UniFi Dream machine has some ports, right? So one port is for the power. This is the power. This is my cable directly from the modem, from the ISP modem. And now this wire here goes to my PoE adapter, which I've already set up. And from the PoE adapter, I have this wire coming out, and I'm going to set this up. So let's actually, before setting it up, let's actually go to the controller software now. I'm going to share my screen and show you what the controller software looks like, and then I can show you live how we set this up. So let's keep this on the side for now, and let me take you guys back to the browser. So whenever you set up your controller, you just simply need to go to this website, unifi.ui.com, right? You go to unifi.ui.com, and it's going to take you directly to your account. This is your UniFi account. And there you can see all the different controllers that are set up. So this is the one controller that I have online called UDM. So let's simply launch it. Yeah. Move all these extra. Let's see. Okay, so this is what my network looks like right now. This is my dashboard. Right now, the Dream machine is not being used too much. It's only at 6% utilization and have one switch. And the one switch is the switch in the Dream machine and 2 access points. So let's click on this just to see what kind of access points we're working with. UDM base unit. And then I also have set up something called the Beacon HD, which is a mesh access point. So that's already been set up, which actually wirelessly connects to the UDM. But now let's go ahead, and if you watch my screen here, I'm going to connect the Flex HD here, put it in here. You know it's clicked in, and you can see a light, a ring light that's come on. And now let's go and look here. What should happen here is, because this is connected, there we go. So if you see what happened right now is the Flex HD automatically was discovered by our software. So as soon as I plugged this in, the Flex HD popped up there. Right now, let's put this down. I'm gonna close this to make sure so the wire is protected. There we go. And I'm going to put it down. And now let's go back to our controller. So this Flex HD currently says pending adoption. So you can very simply click on it here and press adopt, or if you have a lot of devices and you have it set up in this view, simply go here. And there's an adopt button. There are 2 views here for viewing all your devices. And if you can see right now, it's flashing. The white light is flashing, which means it's pending adoption. Now I'm clicking on the adopt button, and now it's adopting the UniFi Flex HD, and this will keep flashing until it gets adopted. And once it gets adopted, it's going to stop flashing and it's going to get adopted here. So this should not generally take too long. In some cases, you might need to update your firmware. So, and this can also be done through here. So for example, if you look here, the Beacon HD requires an upgrade. So I can click on this button and simply upgrade the firmware. And you also have the option to set up automatic upgrades, where you can actually make sure that, say, at 2 a.m. every Monday or 2 a.m. every Sunday, your entire network gets upgraded. So you can also set that up in the settings. Okay, so it looks like the Flex HD, it's still adopting. Let's see here. So we let it adopt. We'll let it adopt here. It's doing its work. And in the meantime, let's talk a bit about the different settings here in the dashboard itself. So of course, we looked at the devices. You can have, right now, I only have 3 devices, but all your switches, all your security gateways, all your other access points are all going to show up here. And then you can also look at clients. So there are not too many devices connected here, but you can see the different clients that are connected here. And then you can also look at all the insights here. You can look at the different insights, and you can look at also statistics, which show you basically kind of what are the different softwares that are being used, what are the different web services that are being used, and you can manage your traffic out here as well. So let's go back to the devices, see what's going on. Okay, it's still adopting. It's okay. You can, for the first time, you can expect it to take some time to adopt. And at the same time, maybe we can go ahead and also look into making sure this one's okay. So if I go here, let's try and make sure this can get upgraded. Are you sure you want to upgrade this access point? Yes, I am. So it's going to update the UniFi AP Beacon HD, and that's all you have to do. Click on the button and it's going to be updated. And we keep pushing new firmwares to our devices as we improve our devices. So it's always good to have the latest firmware on all your devices. So now let us quickly go into some of the basic configurations. I'm not going to take too much time here. I know we're nearing the time, but let's quickly, I want to go through some of these basic configurations here. So here you can go to the settings option. And in the settings option here, it shows you a bunch of basic well, there's a lot here actually, but I'm going to only talk about the basic things. So number one is sites. As I mentioned, you can have many different sites. There's no limit to how many sites you can have, but today let's just deal with one site. And then let's go to wireless networks. That's basically all your SSIDs. So you can create up to 8 SSIDs per access point. So let's quickly go and see what this looks like. Let's create webinar demo. Sure. You have the option of what security features you want here. So you can of course keep it open, or you can create we can do WPA personal, or you can do WPA enterprise. Of course, WPA enterprise is often what businesses can use. And then once you're done with deciding what security you want, you can set up your security key. So of course, I'm going to do a very simple one. Let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Definitely do not use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 for your passwords ever. It's one of the most common passwords ever used. So I'm just doing it right now because it's a demo, but you always want to make sure that this password is secure. Do you want to apply guest policies? If you want to ever use the guest portal or the hotspot portal, you can go ahead and apply the guest policies. And then let's look at some of the advanced options we have here. Right? So you have VLAN IDs. If you want to use a VLAN, it's always good to segment your network. If it's a corporate network and separate guest networks, it's always good to segment your network with VLANs. You can set this up here. Enable fast roaming. If you have some of the newer devices, you can enable fast roaming, which makes sure that there's very seamless roaming between one device and the other device and the next. So it's always a good idea to enable this as long as you have the latest devices in your network. If you have some older devices, this option might actually hurt your network. So make sure you have the latest devices before you enable this. If you don't want the SSID from being broadcast for whatever reason, maybe it's an IoT SSID, always you can prevent it from being broadcast. Let's talk about something called WAN scheduling. So say this is a guest Wi-Fi and you don't want the Wi-Fi to be on Fridays or Saturdays. Or say it's a home Wi-Fi and you don't want you want to set a separate Wi-Fi for your children. And the kids, you don't want them to be using Wi-Fi after, say after 9 p.m. So it means the Wi-Fi is only working on Mondays from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. and maybe on Sundays, you're okay with the Wi-Fi being open the entire time. So of course, this is a scheduling that you can use to see at what times your SSID is going to be displayed. At the other times, the SSIDs will not be displayed. These are some more kind of rate controls. Again, we're going to keep this, as I mentioned, a little more basic, so we won't get into this. Let's, however, get into user groups. Just a minute. Don't want to block LAN. There we go. Yeah. So you also will have the option of selecting a user group here. Right now we have the default user group, but what is a user group? The user group is mainly used when you want to set up bandwidth limits. Okay. So if you want to set up bandwidth limits, you can go to the sorry, where's this gone? User groups section here. And you can set up a new user group. Let's say user group for guests. And you want to limit bandwidth to 50 Mbps, and that's it. Boom. So yeah, you can edit it here. You can maybe limit upload to, you don't want them uploading more than 20 Mbps. Save. And then once you go back to your wireless network and you set up, say, lobby Wi-Fi, you can simply go and you can assign a user group, assign the guest user group, because the lobby is for guests. So you can assign the guest user group to the lobby Wi-Fi, for example. Maybe you don't want it on Sundays and Saturdays. Shut this completely. Maybe Friday, you only want half a day available, right? And then you can maybe look at some things like radius MAC authentication. So if you enable radius MAC authentication, and if you have the USG in your system, you can generally do it. You can always enable radius MAC authentication here. And okay, let's keep it off for now. And then save. So all your settings then get saved very simply. And as I mentioned, you can set up more and more SSIDs. You can set up, we recently saw a setting in a school where I think that they set up 6 SSIDs or so, for one for the teachers, one for the students, one for the admin, one for the guests, one for your IoT devices. So it's always a good idea to segment your network based on SSIDs as well. And one other thing I will talk about is that we have this thing, just a minute. Yeah, we have WLAN groups. What are WLAN groups? WLAN groups are a very easy way to quickly deploy access points by creating a template-based set of SSIDs with parameters and passwords. So you can set an entire, we can put all your settings, attach all the SSIDs to a WLAN group, and then allocate those WLAN groups to various access points. So very easy to just add a new WLAN group out here. And then you can assign those settings to different APs. So if you want only one AP to broadcast the lobby Wi-Fi, you can definitely do that. So it's up to you, and you can definitely assign different WLAN groups to different APs, different SSIDs to different WLAN groups. And when I say AP, I mean access point. So definitely something you should take advantage of, especially if you're looking to do a more advanced network with different kinds of users and different kinds of policies for the different users. And won't spend too much time here, but we also do have, this is the network section where your VLANs can be set up. You can set up VLANs here. One option is a guest VLAN. So actually, if you set up the guest VLAN, it automatically puts in restrictions. So if you do set up a guest VLAN, the guests will not be able to access your corporate network. So VLANs, for those who aren't aware, it's a very good way to segregate your network, to make sure that certain users don't have access to your entire network. So for guests, you may not want them to have access to the rest of the network. So you can definitely set up different VLANs here. And through this network section, you can keep setting up as many VLANs as you need. And then we do have another video on our YouTube channel which talks about kind of advanced settings in the controller. So I'm not going to go through all the advanced settings right now. We're going to keep this at a basic level, but get the idea that all your settings can be done from the controller, including your guest portal. If you want to set up a guest portal, you can do this out here as well. So that's also a good option, but we won't get into it right now. One thing I do want to talk about though is, so if you see right now, the UniFi Flex HD has been adopted, right? It's been adopted here. So let's click on this and let's see what you can do per device as well. So what's very interesting, because out here you can set the WLAN groups as we had seen earlier. You can select which WLAN groups are assigned to the access point. If you go into kind of the settings section, sorry, there we go. You can see here all your different settings for the access point. So this is completely for this one access point itself, right? So you can have different settings set up for different access points. You can have different configurations, LED lights. Here's your radios. So you have a 2G and a 5G radio. Each access point, as I mentioned with UniFi, is a dual band access point. So you have 2G as well as 5G. You can kind of change things like channel width. If your network if you're not getting the right speeds you want, you may want to try a different channel width. If the channel is too noisy, you can change the channel. It's always good to have an auto channel, but sometimes you may want to select a different channel if it's too noisy, if there are too many other devices around. And there's also something called transmit power. If you want to improve the signal of your access point, you can go ahead and increase the transmit power. Very often, this will increase the speeds. So if you're seeing low speeds right now, you can go ahead and change your transmit power to high, and you will almost kind of very good chance you will see faster speeds. But it's not always a good idea. There are other downsides of kind of increasing your transmit power. So definitely something you want to generally keep on auto unless there's a reason you want higher speeds. As I said, the WLANs here, right now, both these WLANs are kind of available on this access point. You can cancel it. You can change the password from here as well. If you want to disable, you can disable a certain WLAN on a certain access point, definitely something. So I think someone mentioned earlier, you can most definitely have each access point completely unique and completely different and set it up as per your requirements. So I think we did cover most things. And one thing I'll say is if you still have questions, you can always go to demo.ui.com. If you see here, demo.ui.com, we have set up our own demo up here. And it's a great way to actually play around with the everything I showed you right now is all accessible through this demo. So go ahead, play around with this when you have some time and see if this is really the control you want to have over your network. Let me quickly switch back so we can conclude this session. We've spoken about device adoptions, and now as you can see, my access point here, my Flex HD access point here has a stable light. It's a blue light. And of course, this light is something that can be managed through the controller, right? So you can completely remove this light. You can reduce the brightness of the light as well. So once you talk about device adoptions, we will talk a bit about the kind of support that you want, right? You're just starting off. There are various different ways you can ask questions. Of course, if you're on this video, you have some questions here, and that's great. And I'll try to answer these questions at the end of the session. But at the same time, you can also put the questions in the comment section here. If you ask us questions in the comment section of this video, we'll do our best to respond to you. Otherwise, you can always go to help.ui.com. You can access our 24/7 support team there. We have a 24/7 live chat support. So definitely go there. A lot of help articles out there, or you can even chat with someone from our team. You can go to community.ui.com and maybe get some tips and ideas from other people in the community. And finally, we do have an entire range of distributors and resellers all over India. So if you simply go to ui.com/distributors, that's where you can just talk to someone, right? You can talk to a reseller who's a local reseller, or you can reach out to one of our national distributors, and they all have teams that are dedicated to kind of UniFi and can talk to you about your network a bit more. And finally, if you still have questions, our email inbox is always open. India@ui.com is an email dedicated to our customers from India. So you should feel free to email India@ui.com, and we'll do our best to support you, or we'll lead you in the right direction with what you need. So yeah, if you're ready, if you think UniFi is right for you, and if you've kind of decided to try it out, you can definitely contact one of our distributors, contact one of our resellers, local resellers all across the country, or you can even go to our store. We do have a web store in India where we sell a select few UniFi devices. So if you're looking to buy 1 or 2 access points just to try out in the start, maybe at home, go ahead, go online, pick it up, free delivery. So of course, if you're looking at some larger networks and if you require assistance with setups, you can always contact your system integrators, contact your resellers. But if you're looking for a couple of devices itself, you can also go to our store. And yeah, so thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for taking out this 1 hour on a Friday morning. And always would love for you to stay in touch. As you see here, we do have a Facebook group, a Facebook page, a Twitter page. We do also have WhatsApp and Telegram groups that are fairly active. So you can go to us, join our WhatsApp group, or you can even kind of look for Ubiquiti India on your Telegram app, and you can join the group there. Great place to connect with the rest of the people in India. So with that, just want to tell you once again that subscribe to the channel. We will, at the end of the session, answer some of the questions in the chat. But for all of those who need to head out, who need to go to something else, it was great having you here. Thank you very much. And definitely click on the subscribe button down there, because it's a great way to be in touch with all the other videos that we're going to be posting. And check out our channel. We have some other videos. We have some unboxing videos. We have some more videos coming out. So definitely go ahead and subscribe to the channel and view our other videos. So thank you for that. And with that, we will conclude the live portion of this session, and we will go into some Q&A. So